Okay, welcome into the Newport This Week podcast. I'm Bill Bartholomew. Each and every week, we profile a newsmaker on Aquidneck Island. We talk major stories that are happening, and certainly you can find expanded coverage of everything we discuss here inside the newspaper Newport This Week on newsstands or newportthisweek.com. This week, we have Newport Mayor Xay Khamsyvoravong. Did I pronounce that right? Do I get
Bill, you nailed it. You nailed it.
I feel like that's like a special category of journalist broadcaster that does it correctly. So
Gene Belicente did a pretty good job a few weeks ago as well. And I'm always happy just to go by Xay as well.
Yeah, well, that makes things easier. Just like me with Bill B, even just from a spelling standpoint. So, all right, we have a lot that we want to talk about today. I want to begin with this major story. It's become a statewide story. Let's be clear about that. And I read from the paper, city official resigns following revelations of inappropriate text. Newport's recently hired elections administrator Stephen Wallach resigned on July 16th following revelations of past inappropriate text messages. You can find out, you being the listener, can find out more about this story if you haven't been following it inside this week's paper. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you. This story, where is it at right now in your mind?
Sure. So, Bill, we spent a while talking about this over the course of the past week. A few things that are important to note, right? First, this employee has resigned and has made the decision that it's probably in the best interest of the city of Newport that he pursue a different path. The second is that these comments were not made while this employee was under the employ of the city of Newport, either in his personal time or his work time. These were comments that were made a number of years ago, right? And so this wasn't a misconduct by an employee while they were on job in the city of Newport. That being said, it is important that the people who represent our city have the highest level of integrity and that we make it very clear that hate has absolutely no quarter in our community whatsoever. The third part of this is that the mayor in the city of Newport actually has no hiring authority over employees below the city manager and the city solicitor. Those decisions themselves are actually made by the council as a whole for the selection of those two specific positions. Beyond that, we are actually prohibited by the city's charter from interfering in any way with the hiring or firing of any employee. Now, all that being said, I will say that this has been a really tough issue because, as somebody who is a person of color, as somebody who has been at the butt end of comments that are offensive in the past, it's tough even for me as somebody who the comments weren't directed at to completely ignore them, right? And so what I ended up doing is the same way that I think any one of you would probably hopefully address a comment or a situation like this with somebody that which is to actually go and talk with the individual and say, hey, what happened here, right? Even though the city is not going to be the right place ultimately for you to keep pursuing your service, what happened here at a personal level, right? It's not like this is a comment that was just made by an anonymous person on some message board online or hurled out of a passing car. This is a comment made by somebody that this community knows very well because they've been in public service for almost 2 decades of very good public service, I should add. And this is also somebody that I got to know very well while campaigning, and then I consider a friend. And so what do you do in a situation like that where you can't hire or fire somebody, where you can't say anything publicly on it? You go down and you have a personal conversation. And I'll be honest, sitting down and spending time with them, this is somebody who not only acknowledges the mistake that they made, but also invested a lot of time in trying to become a better person. This is somebody who met with a DEI coach on a regular basis, still is. This is somebody who made efforts to go out and to work with the communities that he had offended through his comments in the past, actually working to engage with them, understand them better, and make sure that they are represented in our elections. And so it was a really tough week to have to realize that this public service right now is probably not the right place for that work to continue, not for the city of Newport. And so ultimately happy and relieved that the individual made the decision they did, but it's definitely bittersweet because, again, I think this is somebody who, largely speaking, has had a great track record of public service, who has tried to do the right thing here, and ultimately just came to the realization that the city wasn't the right place for him to have his second shot.
All right, so let's move on from there to sort of the bigger issue that this encapsulates, and that's elections. Elections are a big deal. We've seen the consequences of that. It's an election year here in Rhode Island, in Newport, even though it's a quote unquote off year. Talk about elections that are upcoming.
Yeah, so we have our special election coming up in early September. Early voting is going to start very soon. And so this is in full swing underway. We've seen the initial administrative process go through collecting signatures to get on the ballot. Even that doesn't seem straightforward this year, right? And so There's a lot at stake in this election. I think it's very important that Rhode Island sends somebody from the first congressional district. It's not only going to be able to fight for the right ideals that we have down in Washington, but it's actually going to be able to deliver results for people like me who are serving at the local level that need the assistance from our federal and state partners to get things done that we need to get done, right? Getting repairs to things like the cliff walk costs a lot of money. That requires help from the federal government. When we're dealing with a major crisis of any sort that arises, whether it's a hurricane or a mass shooting, the federal government is one of those parties we rely on for help to make sure that gets done. It's really important that we choose somebody to send down to Washington that not only is going to represent the highest of our ideals, but is actually going to be able to deliver for their home districts. That's ultimately why I decided to support Gabe Onmo in the race for Congress. This is somebody who has a great track record working in 2 different presidential administrations, working for our state's governor at a high executive level, but is also a kid who's born and raised in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And went on to do really great things, but it has always called this place home. And so I feel very passionately that he is the right personality for the job, especially given my experience serving as a mayor and seeing just how highly respected he is with mayors across the country.
One thing that you touched on there, signatures, which are sometimes looked at as either this just outdated, annoying aspect of running for office, and other times are sort of an indicator of, just the ability for a campaign to get out and make something happen, for lack of a better term. Sabina Matos, Lieutenant Governor, is caught up in I don't want to say scandal, but it is at minimum a controversy with the validation process of some of her signatures. Newport is a municipality that has been at the center of this discussion over the last days. In fact, I myself have poured through the signature pages that Ms. Matos' campaign submitted, populated some data maps, and you can see that of these allegedly fraudulent signatures for Ms. Matos, they're basically concentrated in the North End. Speaking with some folks, they said they feel forgotten, they feel used. Your take on, if these allegations do pan out, Ms. Matos' campaign forging signatures from Newport's North End residents onto her nomination papers?
Yeah, well, the good news here, right, is that our board of canvassers, led by our elections administrator, who we were just chatting about, did their job, right? They invalidated half the signatures that were submitted. And that's a sign that our government is doing their job. We're taking elections seriously. We're taking elections integrity seriously. And when you look at the steps that they've taken since those allegations occurred, since they had the opportunity to review those signatures, they've done the right thing, referring the matter to first Newport Police and then cooperating with state authorities on ensuring that we get to the bottom of what happened here. Campaigns, particularly at the statewide or congressional level, are large operations with a lot of people working for them. So you really need to be on top of the details. I've managed statewide campaigns twice before, and so I know how complicated it gets. I know how many moving pieces there are. It's very important that you trust the people around you on a campaign, just like it is that you trust the people around you that you ultimately bring into office with you when you get elected. And so for that reason, I think it's important that the Matos campaign directly address these allegations, because at the end of the day, right, what we should be talking about in the first congressional district is not whether or not the integrity of our elections process is stable, or whether the actors are playing by the rules, but the real issues that are impacting people on a day-to-day basis and how our representative in Congress can help Rhode Island families deal with those issues.
All right. City Manager Joe Nicholson is stepping down. Any update there on his replacement? That is in your purview.
It is. Well, first, let's recognize that Joe Nicholson has 37 years of combined service to the city of Newport, either serving as the city solicitor or as city manager. He served several times as acting manager in the past before ultimately moving into the job at the request of the last city council. And so this is a big role. These are big shoes to fill. Currently, we've appointed Laura Citron as the acting city manager. Laura is somebody who's been acting as who has been working as the finance director for the city of Newport for a number of years. She's somebody who originally came out of state. She's worked in the Mid-Atlantic and in other states with an impeccable track record. Newport has very high remarks for the work that's been done on the financial front. And so I'm confident that she'll be able to carry that skill set over into the acting city manager role. Moving past that, we will be doing a search, right, to see what other candidates are out there that could help the city of Newport move into this next chapter. That will be a nationwide search that's done. That will be a public posting that's put through a process. At the end of the day, I'm looking to do some procedural steps very similar to what the city manager implemented when we were going through selecting the police chief. I think there needs to be a third-party independent board that actually reviews these people who are experts in the management of cities before it ultimately comes down to finalists that the council will build away in and select. But that process The posting for that and the process we go through and the ultimate selection isn't just my decision. It's a decision that gets made by the entirety of the city council. And so making sure that individual is somebody that they're comfortable with, it's going to be very important as well, since at the end of the day, the city manager reports to the entirety of the city council that I have the privilege of serving as chair.
Lastly, here, as we're on limited time, this podcast series on the Newport This Week podcast feature is tight, and which is good for the average listener. I think they like that fast-paced information in the TikTok era. But 11th Hour Racing, that's fun. We'll talk about that and their performance and what we've been able to see in these last months here, as really Newport is becoming a global sailing capital.
This is a storybook finish, right? I mean, bringing home the ocean race title to Newport. First time an American team's done it, not just an American team, but Newport's team, and not just a team, but an organization that is dedicated to sustainability and the health of our oceans. I got to tell you, I said from day one that I could not be prouder of that team's captain, Charlie Enright, and of course, Amo Ross, Mark Tohill, the entire team there. I've known Charlie Enright since college, and ever since those days, we're on the sailing team together. He has been the epitome of sportsmanship. He is a complete class act. And so to see him victorious in the ocean race through an incredible number of trials and tribulations, with the support of an incredible team and organization that does an enormous amount for our community here in Newport, could not be more excited to welcome them home. We're working on the celebration details now, and I hope that Newport turns out to give them a warm welcome home. That's very well deserved for a team that's helped continue to affirm that Newport is the sailing capital of the world.
Newport Mayor Xay Khamsyvoravong, as always, thanks so much for your time, Mayor.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it.